What she didn't expect, when she pulled open that door, was to find 15 people in designer coats shivering on her porch, their Mercedes and BMWs buried somewhere in the whiteout behind them. She certainly never imagined that her simple act of humanity that night would transform, not just one morning, but the entire trajectory of her life. Maria had cleaned houses for 17 years. Her hands bore the evidence: rough palms, short nails, the faint chemical burn on, her left thumb from an unfortunate incident with industrial Bleener 3 years prior. She cleaned for the Hendersons on Monday, the Patels on Tuesday and Wednesday, the Robertson estate on Thursday and Friday. Weekends she reserved for the smaller jobs, the apartments and condos of young professionals who paid less but tipped generously around the holidays. She knew wealth intimately, not as someone who possessed it, but as someone who scrubbed its toilets, polished its silverware, and folded its 1,000 thread-count sheets. She'd learned that money didn't guarantee kindness, but it didn't preclude it either. Rich people were just people, she'd always believed, with the same capacity for good and bad as anyone else. The group on her porch that night tested that philosophy immediately. "Please," said a woman in a cream-colored coat that probably cost more than Maria's monthly rent. "Our cars are stuck. The resort conference center lost power. We've been driving for hours trying to find anything open. Your light was the only one we saw." Behind her, 14 other faces stared with varying expressions of discomfort. Cold and, in some cases, poorly concealed disdain. Maria could read it all in an instant, the mental calculations they were making about her peeling paint, her modest porch, the gap in her front steps she kept meaning to fix. She stepped aside. "Come in, please, all of you." Her living room had never held so many people. They filed in like refugees, which in a sense they were. The blizzard outside had stripped them of their usual armor, reduced them to something fundamental: human beings who were cold and scared and far from home. Maria learned their stories as she moved through her kitchen, pulling out every blanket she owned, brewing pot after pot of coffee, heating up the chicken soup she'd made earlier that day. There was Richard Chen, a tech CEO from San Francisco, Margaret Williams, who owned a chain of luxury hotels, David and Susan Krakowski, real estate developers from New York. Others introduced themselves, with titles that meant nothing to Maria, but everything to the world they inhabited: venture capitalists, hedge fund managers, a pharmaceutical executive, a federal judge. They'd been attending an exclusive leadership summit at Blackwood Peak Resort, the kind of event where entry cost $50,000 and promised networking, opportunities with the nation's elite decision-makers. Then the storm hit, harder and faster than anyone predicted. The resort's backup generators failed. Pipes burst. The access road became impassable. Some had tried to tough it out. Others, like this group, had decided to risk the drive down the mountain, certain their four-wheel drive luxury vehicles could handle anything. Nature had humbled them quickly. "I have 3 bedrooms, Maria announced, surveying her cramped living room now packed with millionaires sitting on her. Second-hand furniture. "The women can take 2, the men can share the 3rd. I have extra pillows and I'll set up the couch for a few more." "Where will you sleep?" asked Richard Chen, who'd been watching her with unusual attentiveness. "I'll be fine in the kitchen. I have early mornings anyway." This wasn't entirely true. Tomorrow was Saturday, her light day. But these people didn't need to know that. Through the night, Maria moved like she always did when cleaning houses. Efficient, anticipating needs before they were voiced, making herself as unobtrusive as possible while ensuring everyone was cared for. She found extra toothbrushes, located phone chargers compatible with their devices, showed them where the bathroom was, apologizing for the shower's temperamental hot water. Around 2 a.m., unable to sleep, several of them drifted back to the living room where Maria sat with her coffee, a well-worn Bible open on her lap. Not to read, the words were too familiar to require reading, but for comfort. The way some people might hold a photograph. "You've been cleaning houses how long?" Margaret Williams asked, settling into the chair across from her. The hotel magnate had removed her makeup, looking smaller and somehow more real without it. 17 years. "Before that, I worked in restaurants. Before that, I helped my mother clean offices in El Paso." "Do you have family here?" Maria smiled. "My daughter. She's studying engineering at State, sophomore year. She's actually in Denver this weekend visiting friends. Probably stuck there now with the storm. You put her through college on a housekeeper's salary? This from David Krakowski, his tone not judgmental but genuinely curious. Scholarships helped. And she works part-time. But yes, you do what you do for your children. The conversation deepened as the night wore on. Maria listened more than she spoke, which was her nature. But what she heard surprised her. These titans of industry, these people who commanded boardrooms and influenced markets, were also just tired humans carrying their own burdens. Richard Chen's daughter wouldn't speak to him after his divorce. Margaret Williams had recently lost her sister to cancer and was running her hotels to avoid feeling the grief. The federal judge, Thomas Morrison, confessed he sometimes doubted whether his rulings truly served justice or just the letter of the law. In the intimate darkness of that storm-trapped night, with the wind screaming outside and the warmth of Maria's home wrapping around them, something shifted. The walls came down. The titles fell away. Maria shared her own story without meaning to. How her husband had died when Isabella was 3. How she'd crossed the border with nothing. Worked 3 jobs while learning English at night. How she'd been deported once and came back because her daughter was American-born and deserved the life this country promised. How cleaning houses wasn't her dream, but it was honest work that let her hold her head high. "You're remarkable," Margaret said softly. Maria shook her head. "I'm ordinary. Most people are kind when given the chance. Most people help when they can. But you didn't have to let 15 strangers into your home. You were cold. I had warmth. That's not remarkable. That's just human." By morning, the storm had passed, leaving behind a world transformed into crystal-white silence. Maria made breakfast, eggs, toast. The last of her bacon stretched to feed everyone. They ate crowded around her small kitchen table and the counter, some sitting on the floor, and no one complained about the informality. When the first knock came, Maria assumed it was a snowplow. She opened the door to find a young man in a suit holding an iPad. "Maria Castellanos?" "Yes. I'm with Morrison and Associates. Judge Morrison called this morning. We're here to clear your driveway and ensure your home is secure after the storm." Behind him, she saw a professional snow removal truck. As she watched, confused, more vehicles appeared. Not 15, not 20, 135 vehicles, she would later learn, stretching down her street in a parade of impossible gratitude. SUVs pulled up with contractors who insisted on fixing her porch, her roof, the heating system that barely worked. Moving trucks arrived carrying furniture. A representative from Margaret Williams's hotel chain presented her with documentation. A full scholarship fund established for Isabella, covering not just the remainder of her undergraduate degree but graduate school. 2. Richard Chen emerged from a Tesla with his company's HR director. "We're establishing a new workforce development program. We need someone to run it. Someone who understands what it really means to work your way up. The salary is $120,000 to start, if you're interested." The Krakowskis had brought the deed to a 3-bedroom house 2 blocks away. "We own it as rental property. It's yours. No mortgage. We've also set up a trust for property taxes and maintenance." Car after car, person after person, they came. Her 15 overnight guests had made calls, sent emails, mobilized their networks. They'd seen something in Maria's simple kindness that shamed them and inspired them in equal measure. But it was what Judge Morrison said, standing in her living room surrounded by the chaos of transformation, that brought Maria to tears. "You showed us last night what we'd forgotten. That wealth means nothing if you hoard it. That power is worthless if you don't use it to lift others. You gave us everything you had, your home, your food, your time, your dignity, when you had every reason to close that door in our faces." He paused, his voice thick. "You reminded us to be human. Let us return the favor." Isabella arrived that afternoon, having driven through partially cleared roads from Denver to find her mother's life completely transformed. Maria held her daughter and wept for the years of struggle, for the unexpected grace, for the reminder that kindness, however small, is never wasted. The story spread as these stories do. News crews came. Social media exploded. Some cynics dismissed it as wealthy people salving their consciences. Others criticized Maria for accepting what they called charity. But most people saw it for what it was, a circle of humanity. Started by one woman who opened her door against a storm, completed by 15 people who opened their hearts in return. Maria took the job. She moved into the house. Isabella finished her engineering degree and started graduate school. But Maria never stopped cleaning, just shifted who she cleaned for. Every Saturday, she visited the homeless shelter downtown, not as management, not as a donor, but as someone who scrubbed floors alongside those society had forgotten, seeing in each person what she'd seen in her millionaire guests that snowy night. Human beings worthy of warmth, worthy of dignity, worthy of kindness. Years later, at a gala honoring her workforce development program's success, a reporter asked Maria what she'd been thinking when she opened her door to 15 strangers. She smiled, remembering the knock against the wind. The choice that wasn't really a choice at all. I was thinking that it was cold outside, she said simply, and warm inside, and that's really all that mattered. The knock came at 10:47 p.m. By morning, the world had shifted, not because of money or power or influence, but because one woman understood the fundamental truth that would save us all if we'd only remember it. We are all just humans seeking shelter from the storm, and the greatest wealth is having warmth to share.